we go.
All right.
Hello, I'm Eagle, and hopefully you guys know these guys. Mr. Smiley's Garden, Medically Fit, the Pharmacy Seed Network, Carlton. Cheers, guys. Hopefully you
Yep.
guys have had a good couple of weeks. How you been?
Good. How you doing?
Doing
Doing outstanding, man. It's fucking holiday weekend. We got a long extra day. Got all the plants in the ground already early. This is normally the planting weekend, so ahead of the season.
This episode was scheduled for Mr. Brown Guy 420, who we're hoping will pop in at some point, but it is what it is. We gotta keep the show rolling. But so I wanted to ask you guys about something I did thought I seen in chat here, which would I think falls along the lines of organic or herbal medicine there. I think I seen you guys talking about the stinging nettle. Did I see correctly the other day? So why I didn't want to talk about this pre-show, and I honestly that little hard start right there is why I never. You guys have all done interviews, and that's why I'd never do an interview. That's why we get one, two, three, let's go. Because if you talk before the show, it's hard to do. It's like, well, we just talked about all of this. we just said hi like a half hour ago. Let's say hi again. All right, hello. Anyways, um, stinging nettle. You asked me how the leg was doing and whatnot, and stinging nettle had been introduced to me as of late from my friend, our friend, community friend, Brett Anderson. So I had stopped by. I was down last weekend to see my grandson Chase, and then after we left there, we stopped and seen Miss Brett Anderson, and again concerned about the leg, how I was doing, all that good stuff, and had brought up stinging nettle as a possible remedy as far as treating my injury. So after much consideration, and he's like, "I'll do it on me too." All right, I'm sold. So I let Mr. Brett Anderson whoop on my leg with some stinging nettle. And it was an experience. It was like at first it was different. Yeah, it was a little burny at first, but as the night went on, it did last a little bit longer than I thought it would. But definitely felt amazing as the night went on, and ultimately led up to the run I was speaking to. So I don't know if that was the bridge that kind of helped things along a little bit there, but it definitely put something new on the table as far as like recovery and shit goes. What do you guys know about stinging?
Well,
Well,
stinging nettle is good for arthritis as well. It helps with the anti-inflammatory properties. Even though it feels like it's burning you, what it's doing is helping like reduce the inflammation and what is it, the nerve
yeah.
firing?
So the stinging nettle actually injects acetylcholine, and that actually has an effect on the nerve system, and also because it has an effect on the nerve system, it affects the rest of the system. It opens and closes different channels, right? So another plant you should look at, Eagle, that has totally slipped my mind until you mentioned the stinging nettles on your leg is comfrey. That would help your leg tremendous. You could heal it real fast with that. And we can talk about too. I don't want to carry us off topic. But stinging nettle is, man, what a powerful medicine tool too. Like so many different things you can do with that. You can build soils. You can make teas for feeding plants. The flowers and fruit are great they're like an androgenic compound for regulating hormones. You can eat it. Like I could just go on.
So when you play with it, understand you're going to kind of get little welts. Some people have that adverse effect to it, like almost like poison ivy, but it doesn't spread. It's just kind of stings and burns. But it's really great for like when you're having severe arthritis. If you play with your phone a lot, and when you're done hanging on your phone and your hands just feel really achy, that's that radiation coming from your phone. This is going to kind of help get in and help relax some of that. And so, like he was talking about beating your hands, like your legs, rub it all over it. And that's the best way to really get it on you. And people are too afraid to really handle it. But that's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to really get in and just get it everywhere between the cracks of your fingers and your wrist around it. Like, just depends on the treatment area, really. But
I was afraid to touch it once, like on the ride home, man. I didn't want to spread it around. I didn't know what the fuck to do. I just let it in good faith. I was like, I'm just gonna let it do its thing. And yeah, it was pleasant. It was pleasant. So how come, we don't utilize more shit? How come more remedies like this aren't talking about?
because it's Western medicine versus Eastern medicine. When you have pharmaceutical companies pushing their shit and their garbage for decades, saying this is better, and putting away and trying to ban all the Eastern type medicines, like, yeah, there was a war on like the holistic side of things, and that's where
And-
holistic
and let's-
medicine.
Let's also not forget where the pharmaceutical industry gets all those compounds. They come from plants, from nature. They've just figured out ways to synthesize them and concentrate them quicker and easier and more efficient. And then they've gone and perverted them with all sorts of like new versions of them that aren't the original, compound that we find in nature.
So yeah, I thought it was an interesting and just coincidental. You know what I mean? The day I kind of get whipped with the singing nettle, I happened to look at the chat. You guys were talking about it. I'm like, that's funny. How life can work out like that. So what was what had brought it to you guys is what brought it to the topic at point there? What brought it to chat?
Yeah. So I was talking with a friend of mine last week, and he was just like, he's starting to learn plants from me. He's not a plant person at all, but in being around me, he's taken an interest to it, and I've given him a few different types of plants. He was asking about stinging nettles, and so I was telling him about it, and then and I was like, yeah, I left them behind at the old farm, and I can't go back there, like, so I don't have any stinging nettles at the moment. I haven't found any on this new property yet. Like, but then I haven't looked. Then I walk out back today, and I'm getting ready to get some planters ready for the grow season here. And sure enough, there's some stinging nettles growing in one of the pots. And I'm like, no shit, it came with me. So that's how it ended up in your court.
So does anybody else here on the panel utilize, homeopathic medicines? Obviously, you know what I mean. Mr. Smiley, you're pretty quiet over there. Are you quick to try homeopathic medicines and stuff like that? I mean, are you open to try somebody slapping you with some stinging nettle to see if it cures your ailments there a little bit?
I guess thankfully I haven't really had a real big issue to need anything, but I mean, I walk barefoot. I like to walk barefoot, and I feel better after I do walk through the grass barefoot. And
The grounding yourself.
so, yeah, so like while I'm walking around the garden, which I typically do after work every day, and kind of check out all the shit, and like I try to shoot my feet in the grass and walk barefoot doing that.
Smiley, are you barefoot right now?
Yeah.
Me too.
And
Yeah, see?
but I mean, it's just, yeah, that whole grounding thing. I mean, people can say what they want about it. I just know I feel better after I walk around in the grass without my shoes on, or walk on a beach without, you know what I mean? It's like, I just feel better without with my feet touching the ground. So I guess that's part of it. And the other part is the reason I try to grow the garden is because I want to try to help build a healthier microbiome in our whole family, so I can do that in a way for, like, say, my grandson, because he's gonna come over and eat cherry tomatoes out of the garden that are growing with, living soil, which has the soil food web and all the good stuff going on, which is gonna help inoculate him. The potatoes would grow, all the stuff, man. It's like beans, strawberries, they all are getting treated as looking to be building the microbiome of the soil versus trying to feed the plant, so to speak. So yeah, I mean, those are a couple ways that I look at is, your food is your medicine or whatever.
Food is thy medicine.
I was gonna say, let's not skip that point that food is our
And it's
medicine.
not to say I go psycho about it, and I still eat shit food. I eat potato chips or whatever the shit, you know what I mean? Like we had pizza the other day or whatever, but it's like I don't go crazy about it, but I feel like just adding that little portion in our meals when we do is a big benefit.
Well, just real quick, potato chips. It's more the fried starches that has acrylamide, which causes cancer. And that's what's bad about them. And it's not necessarily the corn chip, it's the potato chip.
It's the fat it's fried in is really the issue. I mean,
The saffron flour, the sunflower oils.
I love potato chips.
those oils are bad, man. Bad.
I should make my own, you know what I
Make
mean?
your
We
own.
grow
Yeah.
enough of our own potatoes. We could probably slice them and pan fry my own or whatever.
Get some
Oh,
coconut
there's
oil.
nothing better than
Would be
pan
way
fried
better.
potato slices, fucking smothered in ketchup and fucking hot sauce. Woo!
I'm
That's
gonna be making
fucking
some of those after this now.
Yeah,
fried
you
potatoes.
know, it's a
What
good idea.
about what about pizza? You guys eat a lot of pizza too? I mean,
Not a lot, no. Fucks my gut up when I do. But I like pizza. I like it. I love pizza, but yeah, I usually pay
I
for it.
like pizza too, but once in a while I can't. Not all the time.
so what are some of the healthy regimens? Like, is it vitamins that you're taking? Is it smoothies you're doing? Is it just watching your diet and the food you eat? What is the healthy things that you guys are doing yourselves to, I don't know, improve your health, besides using cannabis? We know Eagles running.
Yeah,
Run, Eagle, run.
I'm not that psycho either.
You're
Well,
not that psycho either.
supplements have always been important to me. You know what I mean? Which ones and why vary, I guess. But I've always tried to supplement because I know I eat shitty. This time, right now, I was just talking about this today with Angel. Every time I tend to back off my physical activity and kind of get away from the everyday ache and that good wellness feeling, I tend to fucking search for it somewhere else. So I tend to fucking go backwards and I start indulging in fucking sugars and shit like that. And then I notice body aches and stuff like that. So right now I'm kind of getting back to trying to cutting out some of the sugars. Try to getting back to, if I need sugars, get back to some more natural fruits and stuff like that. I've cut back on a lot of my supplements. Basically, about the one I take at these moments are either some mushroom blends of the chaga, the cordyceps, and St. John's, or what is it? The lion's mane, excuse me, the lion's mane. Usually those three and the shilajit, which I've been taking now for a few months, which I found that to be very beneficial into the mix. So I think that's what I'm doing currently as far as like trying to supplement outside of the running and exercise like that. I'm trying to get some of the sugars out and a little bit less of the supplements. I'm trying to go thinking with the mindset maybe less is more because I don't necessarily, know how some of this other shit is stacking up.
I like that concept because I think really we should be getting as much of our nutrients as we can from whole foods. And then incorporating that food, they get digested and pulled in better, right? But then there's stuff that we're deficient in. So there's stuff to supplement for. Like I'll give you an example of what I typical diet for me is like. I usually run like a grass-fed beef, a salad, as organic as I can source that, as much of my own, produce as I can put in that.
So here's the problem. A lot of these green, leafy,
No.
vegetable, seed, fruit bearing vegetables, whatever the fuck you really want to call them, they're bad for us. And a lot of them produce these different alkaloid or alkaloid type shit that our body, it's toxin to our bodies. And then some people don't understand, like, if I eat a salad, all of a sudden I get really this bad inflammation in my body, and I don't understand why I'm eating healthy. But we also have to go back and correlate some of these foods are not so healthy for us as we think, like some of these salad type lettuce, some of them, different like some tomatoes are actually bad for us.
Yep.
What is it? The lycopene in it is not so good for us, or whatever.
No, the lycopene is good. It's is because they're in the solanacea family, which is in that the nightshade family, right?
Right. Yeah.
So there are nightshade compounds in there. But if you get a tomato that's grown in an environment with balanced trace minerals, maybe the compounds balance out in that because you have the other compounds to help counter those, right? But you get imbalanced stuff with imbalanced nutrients. When you have a balanced system, you end up with a balanced nutrient. And a lot of times, like if you take like an extract of a plant and not the whole plant, you get like the certain effect, right? But you also get a negative effect. Whereas if you took the whole plant, like if you read Stephen Herod Buhner's books, he talks about the whole plant is much more effective. And Daniel, what's his name too, also talks about
Lectin's not good for us, right?
no, lectin. You don't think lectin is good for us?
That's a binder, right? That's a good.
I think that's one of them they talk about. That's not quite so good for us.
Chocolates.
Oh, lectin. I'm thinking lecithin. I got it mixed up because lecithin's not so bad, depending on source. Clean source, organic sunflower.
So that's kind of like the shit part about it. It's like, what the fuck do we really eat then to eat healthy and properly? Where even though some of these vegetables, fruits actually have toxins or different type of, go ahead. I see you on the talk, Kyle.
I'm sorry. Your point is so valid because I just recently had an experience with that. I'm eating a salad. I had a dressing mix that I was making. I was buying, whole clean olive oil, whole clean vinegar, organic source, like all the way to the max with that. And then I was putting like a fresh seasoning mix in it, right? Come to find out, I think that's got MSG in it because like I'd gone off salad for a week, going back on it, felt crappy, runs. So I dropped that out of salad dressing and just made my own dressing. Now I eat a salad, I feel great the next day. Not a huge one, small one. And I mix in, carrots and peppers. I make a blend and stuff, not just greens for sure. Anyway, it kind of supports what you're saying about like also about the paying attention to how you respond to food. Note when you eat something, if you feel crappy half an hour later, think about that. That's might be the food. If it happens again and again every time you eat that, correlate that. So many people just don't even pay attention to it.
Well, I think it's because the way a lot of us are taught what we believe is healthy and what we've actually learned is what is not so healthy for us as what we once thought. Kind of like, oh, aspirin is good for you or ibuprofen is good for you. Oh, but it destroys your gut biota, so it's not good for you. So it's stuff like that on the information that we're getting taught over the years that is misinformation. And
that's one thing. So my wife had gone through she's suddenly was losing weight, didn't really know why. Like anything she ate would go right through her, didn't know why. And the doctors kept running tests for like a couple years until they figured out that she developed this egg and dairy allergy. middle of her life, or whatever, like all of a sudden, bam, she's allergic to them. So that is part of what stemmed the whole garden thing is she had to change her whole diet. She had to figure out how to cook different shit. Like took a minute to get all that out. But now after like there was some medication they had given her that was helping, but like now after eating out of the garden for the last few years, all that, it's like she don't even take anything. She doesn't have really issues. You know what I mean? It's like all kind of settled down for her, and I really feel like a lot of that's just bringing the whole spectrum of that microbiome back into your body. Like I know you talk about the lettuces and stuff, but the point of some of that is like there's endophytic bacteria, there's things that actually live inside the cell of that lettuce, right?
Mhm.
And the lettuce doesn't digest through our system like normal, so which means it can carry all the way through your intestine. So at any point, all the way through there, that can be inoculated with that bacteria. There's different things that work that way, but it's like, yeah, when you're eating them fresh out of the garden, you're getting all that life, that vitality right there inside those cells. It's, I think, a whole different ballgame from trying to even buy it at the store and say, oh, I got, these good vegetables or whatever, good food at the store. It's like, it's still totally different than pulling it right out of the garden and cooking it right then. Like you pulled it, like by the time you're eating dinner, it was like 40 minutes ago that was in the ground. You know what I mean? Like there's a big,
Yeah.
big difference in all that.
Yeah, and to your point that conveying that microbiome right from the soil to yourself, that's like like the plant digestive tract, right? You're just moving that to you basically, right? Like in a way, because the plant is basically a whole microbiome in itself, right? Does that make sense?
So, I mean, so how important are you guys when it comes from your garden, with the mindset of capturing all the microbes and like that? How well are you washing, you know what I mean, that food out of the garden? Are you actually trying to keep, as much as the microbes environmental will put on there? Are you more concerned about washing it and what the food or vegetable provides?
I'll rinse off dirt. Other than that, I'm trying to preserve the microbiome.
That's my question is what do you consider washing? Are you actually soaking it and letting it sit in water? Are you putting some type of like dish soap or something in there to help clean it and rinse it off? Are you just rinsing it underwater to knock like shit off and dirt off and trying to keep some of the biology? Because people do it differently. And if you're really trying to keep as much biology, you're not trying to wash it. You're just trying to quick rinse it.
I know you ain't gotta wash off the fucking what is that shit that Bill Gates sprays on all the vegetables now
The
to
appeal.
it? Yeah,
Appeal.
that's
Yeah.
what you're washing off is all the bullshit they spray on them to keep them on the counter for at the grocery store or whatever. But in the garden, like if you're pulling something out of your garden, you didn't spray shit on. You know what I'm saying? Like so. Yeah, I mean, you rinse some of the dirt off or whatever, make sure there ain't no bugs on it or whatnot. But like, I don't consider, we eat strawberries right off the plant all the time.
The beauty of no chemicals is no toxins to be exposed to in a healthy
No
micro.
pesticides or any of that shit.
It's like that's
Yeah.
it's not a concern at all because I didn't put any of that crap on there in the first place. It's
No
just
glyphosates.
yeah.
I shouldn't say that I don't spray my plants, but I spray for health, not war.
Right.
You know what I mean? I'm spraying to make the plants so they get fulvic acid and aloe and shit like that, but it's not like
Adding nutrition. That's all.
yeah.
Well, I think if you're going to spray or had to spray on your gardens, there's more ethical ways: pepper sprays, garlic sprays, tobacco sprays. I think we would view a little bit more ethical than what's being
Yeah.
sprayed on these larger farms and shit. And I'm there with you. When I had the beautiful chance to fucking grow my vegetables too, I never, kids worry about bug poop, whatever. You know what I mean? And
That's natural.
I didn't see it. It didn't bother me. Right there, fucking green beans. Always loved. That's always been my garden favorite. Right there is fresh green beans out of the garden.
Well, if people really knew how much bug parts were in the food that they actually eat and that is allowed, you would probably never want to eat your food. Seriously, because there are more bug stuff, especially in like lettuces that are prepackaged. If you took that home and washed it out and drained it through like some type of strainer or something to see everything that was left in that package,
No,
no,
I'm not
you're
running experience, man. It's like,
you're not going to want to eat it if you have a problem with bugs and bug shit. But most of us know that that's life, and that's you're going to eat it when you sleep. You actually spiders crawl in your mouth or bugs crawl in your mouth if you sleep with your mouth open. There's nothing you can do about it. You wake up, it's there. You already ate them, consumed it. Like it's life.
yeah, it's funny you bring that up because at one point after like having some microscopes, I stopped, man. I seen when I first got my little USB fucking microscope and shit, I ran around and fucking looked at everything. And I quickly put that fucker right the fuck up. I didn't want to know fucking. So at one point, I got a little germophobia, you know, even in my older age, uh, from doing construction and shit like that, man. I'd fucking it comes to brooming, if I see somebody brooming a fucking job site, man, I'm like, yeah, you better sweep slow and low, boy. Keep that dust slow and low, or get out the vacuum. I don't want to breathe that shit.
Well, they make this compound that you put down on it, and it just keeps all the dust down. So they'll use that now when
It's
they're
called water.
well. Besides, there's other stuff besides water, but yes.
It's funny. Well, and as far as that goes, man, I was traveling through the country the other day and seeing like farmers. I'd fucking pulling the fields there, creating just huge dust storms, man. You know, I mean, at some point, breathing some of this shit in isn't, you know, it's just part of life, you know.
Well, if you
And
knew how much salmonella, E. coli, and all these bad pathogens that are in the air naturally always around us, like it would scare people more than most. That's why people become germaphobes and they're scared of touching stuff or, germs getting on them that they're going to get sick, which
They're
Wait.
even finding that we have E. coli in our gut, and that if we don't eat the correct nutrition, that they turn against us, and that's how people get E. coli, get sick from E. coli so easily because their nutrition doesn't support a healthy E. coli that integrates with the rest of the gut microbiome in a healthy
And-
way.
that's going back to keeping good beneficial bacteria biology around to keep the bad ones in check.
Speaking of which, you mentioned what we eat, right? One thing that I am very consistent about now, and I wasn't, and it's made a huge difference in my health and recovery and energy and focus and everything, is sauerkraut. And it's a beet ferment. It's kind of like a kvass. It's beet and ginger. And those two fresh ferments, man, they make such a powerful tool. The amount of vitamin C just in the sauerkraut, just vitamin C, forget about the microbiome and all the other beneficial stuff, is incredible. It's through the roof.
Kraut and kombucha are just so hard for me to do.
Yeah, but I tell you what, though, the sauerkraut is what it made it so I could go off of ascorbic acid as a supplement and switch to sauerkraut for my vitamin C, and it's made a huge difference in my health, my cardiovascular system, my teeth, my gums, my circulation. I can go on.
so curious now. I guess this question applies to both cannabis and your garden. Memorial weekend is traditionally the weekend you put your plants in the ground. Do you guys have any tips for a successful season, organically, both cannabis and your garden? I mean, if you haven't put your cannabis plants or your garden in yet, what tips do you have for a year success?
Hope for the best. That's it. Because no matter what you fucking do, you can't control every situation. Even though you are doing IPMs and different treatments, doesn't mean that all of a sudden your shit gets pollinated by some idiot down the street that had a male plant that didn't want to cut it down. Or you're in the flower, you're 30 days in, and all of a sudden you get hit by russet mites. You can't do nothing about it. You can't spray to kill them or treat them. Oh, you could bud wash now. Don't do that garbage. No, it ain't the best. You have chances of getting mold in there or different like bad pathogens by doing that, in my opinion. And no, so it's hope for the best. You plan for the worst, but do your best to maintain and just make sure watering's happening. Make sure that you're not getting excessive light when it comes to flower time, when it's going into flower, because there's a lot of in town, a lot of people have lighting on their houses or pole lights, and it's going to affect the flower of your plant. So you really have to look at where you're growing at too.
The one tip I would have is like plant more flowers and try to get a diversity of flowers going around the garden, because that's going to draw in a lot of the predators, the pollinators, so if something does pop up, you're hoping that there's going to be predators around that are ready to scoop them up too, And that's just the easy way to do. Just bring more bugs around, with like seasonal flowers, all kinds of different ones.
I would extend that even further and add some herbs right around your cannabis plants, some thyme and some oregano and some rosemary, and like mix it up, give them a good mixture of community underneath them. Not too close, but near them so they can access that community.
So you have to be careful on what plants you're planting close. For example, a lot of people like marigolds, but marigolds actually bring thrips in, because thrips really love marigolds. And so if they're next to your cannabis plant, well, you might run the risk of getting thrips in your plants. Some plants like mints, aphids love. So you can't really put mints in with your plants because you're going to maybe have an aphid infestation at that point. So really watching what some of these plants are, and not necessarily put them like next to it, but close enough that if a pest or any type of bug's going to come towards your plants, they're going to hit those plants first. It's like your first shield of defense. Attack these plants so I can identify that you're there, and use that so I can make sure you're not attacking my plants, and then treat for what I see and what I need to do.
I was looking at it more from a connecting the root microbial community in the same soil. So distance could actually be further than you can imagine, that it would still have quite an effect, right? So you could be in the same garden bed with something and not necessarily, interfering with the plant. And as far as mint goes, I don't put mint in anything other than a container, or it just takes them.
So I'm curious about like the whole banker plant, companion plant thing, especially outdoors. And I kind of believe that nature has its own checks and balances. So should we greedily add things for our own benefits, or do we naturally let nature cycle out? So if you plant something new to the environment, and yes, it will, and probably invite an invasive species that wasn't normally there. So how long before nature kind of this, like you're saying, another banker companion plant pops up to defend the now new bug population that of the plant that you planted drove in? How long before that checks and balances, and before you can take note yourself, I just need to let these grow up. You know what I mean? I don't really need to add anything. I just kind of, let kind of sway it a little bit.
Well,
Your observation skills, I would say, because that is the art of it.
I've got two examples. My living no-till regenerative bed. all the diversity and the biology and plant diversity, and then the biology diversity and bugs that are around it. Now, the other is the volunteer cannabis plants that are coming up around my compost pile that no feeding, no treating, no watering, no nutrients. And what's happening on those plants versus the living bed. Because they don't have the diversity and biology of those other plants around them, they're being attacked like crazy by all these other bugs, gnats and grasshoppers and different beetles. But the bugs in the living bed, they're all still there. The gnats, the beetles, but what's keeping them in check is there's wasps, there's ladybugs, there's been lacewing, there's been a little praying mantis starting to show up. So when I have more of a diversity around some of my plants, it seems like I have more of an ecology where the whole soil food web's trying to happen. But when it's just individual plants and they don't have a lot of these other beneficial cover crops or companion plants, I'm getting then more where my plants are being attacked more and nothing there to help fight off these bad pests.
So I have another question for you guys for prep this gardening year coming up, and that would be for manures. You know, when should you apply manures? How concerned should you be with the manures that you're applying? Lately, we've kind of worried about, and we've talked about like the trickle down of nasty shit getting in there. Here in Michigan, I've seen we've talked about the PFAS before on another episode from cattle, you know, eating bad stuff and then passing it down into the soil through their excrements there. So how, if you're gonna source some natural, you know, manures and stuff like that, how careful should you be? Should you be asking the farmer exactly what they're feeding it? What types of manures are good for what, and when should you be applying them? Should you be applying them at all? You know what I mean? What's your thought on, you know, that process?
Well, let's go to PFAS real quick. Look at what storage containers they're being stored in as well. Look at the plastic baggies we're using to sell weed in and give them to our friends. Like a lot of that we're getting contaminants from because plastics are giving off PFAS or other chemicals that are hormone disruptors. So look at that and not just the manure. But compost, I'm going to be concerned on different high phosphate levels, different sources. If I'm getting it from a local municipal, Jesus, then I'm going to be worried about other chemicals like pharmaceuticals in there. I'm going to be worried about shit like that. So unless I really understand how it's being made and processed and what's being put into it and how, like where they're getting everything, I may not want to use compost. I may not want to use my own compost I make around the house just because every time it's going to be different as much because I'm adding different shit to the compost piles. So it's never going to be the same. So it may change on me. If it doesn't, I don't want to say cook long enough, but you know, if I don't get my ratios brown to greens right, I'm going to have some issues too. And that's one of the hardest parts about doing composting is getting those ratios right. Anybody else?
Well, I would say, why are you adding manure? For what purpose? Which should be your first question. Anything you're going to add to your soil, you should have a reason you're adding it. And manure, you shouldn't be adding a lot of that. I mean, that's what I'm learning in everything we're doing in regenerative ag. Unless if you're mixing a soil, that's one thing. If you're mixing your own soil in a container, but if you're working in a native soil, you should be analyzing that soil and adjusting that soil to balance and working in a balanced soil system as much as you can. And that won't require a lot of manure. It really requires a lot more biology than anything to get activated.
Well-
Within the system and getting the trace mineral nutrition balanced correctly. Those are like really the two critical fertility fire factors. And then once you do that, then, you know, I mean, manure can be integrated into that for sure, but it's not, I don't think it's a primary driver, although it can be an excellent source of microbes.
So there's also the difference of making soil and letting soil like a pasture just be grazed, shit on, left alone, not touched, and moved on to the next pasture versus you trying to mix manure into your soil that is not getting the time to break down fully.
Those two are not equivalent at all.
No.
All does not equate.
So why and where I'm using it, not anywhere currently. Back in the day, is what we were taught. You know what I mean? Every year you either throw it on in the fucking fall or you fucking throw it in and rotate, you know what I mean? Rototill it in earlier in the spring. Soil builder. You know what I mean? It's always, you know, the reason why it was
No,
used.
wait a minute.
And because more or less, you know, again, just taught from elders around me, more or less, than picking up a book. To be honest, Carlton, you
Let's
know,
think about it though. Back in the day, how many toxins were there? Like if you look at the like the statistical charts on toxins from like late 90s on through till now, the escalation is like factorial. It's crazy the amount of toxins that are being put on soils, food, like into every part of our ecosystem at a phenomenal rate, right? So like I wonder, you know, back in the day, if when you threw the manure on, it cooked down to what it was supposed to cook down to in the soil for now,
I mean,
if you got chemicals mixed in with it, it's messing all of that biology up and all that communication up. And once
I mean,
mess
if you
with
think
that-
about it on a smaller level, we've micronized it. And we just use worm compost. We're still using shit. We're just using a different, you know, different beast, different scale. You know, so we're still kind of composting, you know, feces and some. We've just picked a better venue. You know what I mean? So
Well, and look at the research now versus back in the 50s and 60s on how much phosphorus is really there and available. And like we're dumping too much phosphorus on, and we really don't need all the nitrogen that, you know, we once used to have to put in there. And that's why we use the manures for nitrogen sources. And now it's different. Now the research says don't apply so much of it.
And that's exactly why I said, what, you know, what are we doing, where and why? So anytime we do something, let's have a reason and purpose for it first. Otherwise, we're just arbitrarily doing something, hoping for good results. Like if we're going to have a plan, let's make a plan and execute it, right?
that's why I ask these
Well,
questions.
I was gonna mention too, as far as like manures go, there's also the, you know, like insect grasses and shit like that too. I don't know if worm castings would be considered a manure, you know what I mean? But there's definitely, I always look at it as applying some type of a biology and a, you know, nitrogen source kind of. So like I put some pelletized like chicken manure or whatever, granular chicken manure out in the vegetable garden because I knew it needed some nitrogen this year. I mean, it's our third year in a lot of these beds. I knew it needed a little boost of that, you know. I also applied it with some bone meal and some gypsum and different things that I knew the plants were taken out of the soil and needed to be replenished back. But we're also adding, you know, forms of organic matter and biology that are going to help to condition that soil too, to be able to be a fertile environment for the plants to grow. You know, it really made a difference this year.
And that's why I said one of the primary things you should be doing is observing your plants and your soil and stuff, because that's how you adjust better for next year and improve that system as you go. And the better you get at observing and recognizing changes and the different pieces, the better off you're gonna be in results. Like that's you're seeing it already, right? Like you showed me some pictures of your beds today, Smiley. Like they're looking awesome, dude. Those plants are getting ready to explode.
So that brings me to another question for you guys. I've learned a lot over the last year talking with you guys. These episodes, the power of what bacteria and enzymes do, and the power of growing that same plant or that same species back to back in that soil. So, is it better to kind of keep whatever you're growing in that area and adjusting to your yield and what last year's plant looks like versus trying to do like a little bit of crop rotation and mix things up a little bit, and or at that point you're just going to chase it when you could be honing in the tomato part of the garden, you know what I mean? The bean part of the garden versus, or is it just one source? Oh, we're back to the one source all again. We just do the same for the whole garden.
Well, here's the problem. And even Kevin Joddery has talked about this real recently, and we've talked about it many times on here already. Every year is going to be different. It's never going to be the same crop. No matter how much you try to do the same amendments, the sourcing is going to change on them. You're going to change something a little different. The season's going to be a little different. That no matter how many times you try to repeat the same repeatable grow, it's not repeatable. Kevin has even mentioned this. He has tried time and time again to produce the same crop, flower, smoke, but it comes out different every time. And it's so hard to repeat the same grow season after season, or flower, harvest to flower every time. It's difficult. So can you really manage it the best you can? Yeah, we try, but it's never going to be spot on 100%.
Brings me to a thought. Are you really aiming for the same or are you aiming for better?
Most of us are aiming for better, trying to get the best potential genetic expression we can, but do we know when it's been reached to say that's it? We don't, because we're always changing shit up, or shit's never the same every season to know what the full genetic potential of the plant is.
We
I'm
don't
growing.
know all the unlock codes for sure.
Mac 1 is phenomenal, but do I think I pushed it to its limits? Fuck no. I've grown it for several seasons and it's very repeatable in the end product, but sometimes it's been a little different, and like I'm getting denser flowers than other times. I'm getting more production on my flower size than other times, so it changes. Smiley, are you having anything like that?
Yeah, there's always variables, and the plant expresses to the environment. If there's variables in the environment, it could be your nighttime temperature, or lights off temperature changed, something you didn't really pay attention to because you're not in there, you know what I mean? It's like, because some of that shit can play a role. Some plants I think do react more to that, where you'll get more of an expression based on the environment versus other ones that don't seem to really care as much, and they just kind of do their thing no matter what's going on. I've noticed that too. I mean, genetics really does matter in what you're dealing with there. But yeah, of course. I mean, that's something even wine producers have known and dealt with. I mean, that's why you hear, there's all this certain year of this certain grape was the best year for that, or it was or the last year, oh, it was, too much rain or whatever, and it didn't turn out as right, or it was too dry or whatever. But the same vine is growing that grape, right? It's just a different season. One summer was drier, one summer was wetter, and the plant responded differently to each one.
Or it had more sunshine one year, then a lot more cloud cover the next, and it had different stressors, environmental stressors that causes it to change. Like when we know that some fruits, when they have drier seasons, seem to be more sweeter than when they have a wetter season. So it's kind of interesting for that. Cannabis is the same way. They say if you actually let the full natural dry cycle happen and you're drying your pots out like you should, that stress alone is causing more of an expression and getting a better sweetness out of it than watering it all the time.
I just got
Water and something.
done texting with our guest there. So, unfortunately, today is a mess. Unfortunately, much like we kind of surmised,
It's
little
a
bit of,
holiday weekend, yes.
holiday weekend and work got out of control, but he guarantees me for the next episode he will 1000% clear his schedule for us for the next episode. So all is not lost with Brown Guy 420. Just a man, life happens. Life happens. You know?
It
And we,
definitely does. Paul's a cool cat, and yeah, I
Definitely.
understand how that shit can change on you real quick.
so back to some of the composting. Futz and Funny talks about cardboard and compost. And yes, that's something you need to be very concerned about because some of the cardboard and the way it's made are the chemicals used to spray and treat it. You're adding that to your compost to break down. Now those chemicals are in there wreaking havoc on the biology. You don't necessarily want to do that, even though they talk about browns being better than white paper, for to be thrown in there. It's cardboard's even harder to want to recycle anymore compared to what it used to be when it didn't have these chemicals or these painted inks on some of them, or these different inks on some of it. So yes, that is one thing that I would agree on, that it's not so good as like what it used to be. And then there's another one.
I know somebody just had a deal they were talking about, like how shitty cardboard is, and I was like, holy shit, man, like my whole garden, I got 6 beds that I started by laying cardboard down and put the frame down on it and put dirt, you know what I mean? Like put the soil down. But like, yeah, so they were talking about that, and I actually started, like every bit of it has cardboard, and I just threw cardboard down and then put like 6 inches of the old pot soil, soil from the old pots or whatever on there, and like, yeah, that's how I started off. It's all going fine. I actually got the like cheap ass topsoil from like with municipal compost shit. Like, I don't know. I mean, and then I just amended it from there. Like I figured, it was gonna be probably plenty of potassium, plenty of organic matter. It's all that. But then it was like probably needed calcium, so I added a bunch of the calcium amendments to it. Figured some nitrogen would be needed. I've actually had really good luck with it all. But I don't get it heavy metal tested and all that. It's my broccoli, you know what I mean? Tasted good.
Everything you guys have said, I've kind of wondered even about our earthworm castings. The inputs that are being fed to them. As the larger scale or industrial companies get bigger and bigger, they come more and more corners rather, excuse me. So I mean, can we even trust the big boys? I mean, I've even accused of like even them feeding or adding too much heavy material like sand to the earthworm beds there just for the extra weight of the bag. So can even what you feed yours, like, are we talking how critical is paper? Because I've yet to do the earthworm bed, but I hear a lot of people cardboard in there, but they're their shit. You know what I mean? Paper and whatnot in those. Newspaper at that. You know what I mean? Inks and shit like that. How deep is that gonna play into your cannabis? Is that gonna fucking toxify or bring up heavy metal contents in tests if you know you're feeding newspapers and shit to your fucking earthworms or your worms and shit like that? You know, how far, how far do you question the chain of inputs? I guess you know what I mean.
My rule is don't put it in your source. But I've used cardboard as a mulch in the garden beds and it worked great. But I'd lay cardboard down, I put leaves or grass or some other a thick layer of organic material on it and I keep it wet and earthworms come in and eat it. But I feel like in that space, that's a little bit of what they're eating, right? They're mining the whole soil profile there. Now you take that and put it in a worm container and you're just feeding them cardboard and paper, you're concentrating at that level, then I think you're concentrating whatever toxins you're putting in. I think that's different when I think about the mechanism of that.
Well, when I think of like cardboards and papers and shit like that being composted, I think more of, the diversity of microbes in that process. These days they're breaking down fucking plastics. They're taking care of fucking nuclear bullshit. You know what I mean?
Taking care of
So the
oil
cleaning-
spills.
Yeah, the cleaning up the cardboard through that process, I can see of a better way versus an input like I've heard a lot of people say to the earthworm bin, right? No, the microbe aspect of it is a pretty powerful, part of the process here. I mean, the process, as we talk about, and I've said this many times too, man, the more and more I've learned about shit and the power of the microbes and where they fall into play here, I wonder if we're not just, a lower peg down the power chain there. You know what I mean? We may just be servants. We may not be, top the totem pole like we think we are.
No, we're fully indentured, I think.
Yeah, I don't know.
I mean, I would say source as much organic as you can. If you got a forest nearby full of leaves, why are you using cardboard which have leaves?
Well,
Like if you're trying to make your own worm compost stuff, why are your worms not just in your soil, in your living soil? Like, why are they not mining your soil as part of your system? If you can do that, I would do that.
Well, hold on. Because going out and outsourcing other material from local around your area. So you drive 20 miles to the nearest forest, bring that shit back to your place. You might not be bringing all good shit with you. So that is kind of the concern. And even Dr. Ingham talks about watching some of where you're sourcing some of your shit that's not really local to your area or region. Because me living in a high desert, if I go up to mountains and I try to bring some soil back to down here, well, they might not survive in these conditions.
Well, that's why I said in your backyard. I didn't say drive 20 miles away. I said in your backyard.
But that's explaining for like people to understand.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you made that distinction because the environment may be vastly different 20 miles away. And again, environment dictates gene expression. Let's never forget that in this equation.
you guys trying anything new this year? In either your outside garden or your outside cannabis grow?
Lots of stuff. Antenna.
I don't know if it's really new, but I'm definitely putting straw down around all the cannabis for the outdoor. It's
Why straw, not alfalfa?
Just to keep, I mean, you can do it, but it's just a good mulch. It keeps the soil cool and moist where it's able to function well. It keeps a lot of the disease and pests down, shit like that.
Gonna get a lot more light reflectivity with that as well, which is very nice.
Yeah.
See, I've always kind of went back and forth adding some alfalfa just to get the tricantanol, just to allow some protozoa to really get in with it. Because that's what alfalfa really kind of helps out with. So
I add alfalfa to the soil, but I'm talking about like mulching. I don't
yeah,
necessarily-
yeah. You could go buy a bale of alfalfa, just like you can buy a bale of hay or straw and
Oh,
put it
okay.
down.
You're
Yeah.
not talking about pelletized. You're talking about go buy alfalfa bales.
Yes.
It's a great
Yes.
idea. That's a
Yes.
Mhm.
But you do have to be careful with that because it can alter pH a bit. So don't overdo it and like heavy irrigated or something like that. You might screw your pH up for a bit.
I've always known the alfalfa to be pretty potent, you know, like it's a pretty potent additive usually.
Yeah, but as a mulch, it would be slowly breaking down and supplying over time. That's a great.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's why I like to mix it up using that. And not all the time, but just when I'm adding some mulch layer, I will grab some alfalfa and actually let it break down with the straw or hay that I'm putting
Yeah.
down as well.
Yeah, what you do is make that your next layer, Smiley, and then do another,
Hay layer.
hay or straw
Straw, yeah.
layer. Yeah, and then do another alfalfa layer, do a stack other, every other, and maybe throw a leaf layer in there too if you got a clean leaf source.
I do have somebody that is well known for the lasagna tech on deck for an appearance on the show very soon.
Very excited to hear about that one. I mean, I've played a little bit with that sort of stuff, but I can't wait to hear what somebody who's like focused on that intensely for a long time. Can't wait to hear what they've learned and discovered.
Nice. Yeah, very interesting on how you plan ahead like that. To me, man, I'd be afraid of the molds. I'd be afraid of the molds to be stacking up some shit like that and letting the moisture kind of do its thing, But I'm trying to be more open-minded these days. When I first tried the cover crop, when Smiley passed me, there's boxes there, man. That shit fucking, I panicked with that much less. Again, putting down something I think might rot and fucking break down in time to even pull it back and see a little bit of that look, poof. Still kind of like, I don't know if that's good. Yeah, I'm sure it is, but I know it is these days. But kind of a ballsy technique, in my opinion. But listen, I'm interested. I got questions. I got questions.
Well, and the only time molds are a little different when it comes to layering that shit, especially when you have more of a beneficial bacteria trying to get inoculated to help break it down versus molds. And if you look at your decomposers,
Yeah.
that's going to make a difference as well.
Let's talk about decomposers, especially saprophytic fungi. They only eat dead tissue, right? So if you got a plant that they're attacking, they're eating the dead tissue on that plant. That's a plant that's already in disease, already sick. And that's back to the conversation about bugs on your plants and all that kind of stuff. And why we talk about soil so much, we're trying to get that living system so accelerated that it holds a balance, that we don't have those problems.
Can you stack up, say Smiley does, interchange the straw for the alfalfa? I mean, would, watering with, say a bokashi at the end of the season, would it help speed up the breakdown and, get all the goodness from the alfalfa drip down into the soil? Or could he utilize something like that? Would it be too much, what I mean, to do earlier in the year for a beneficial?
If you understand bokashi, first of all, bokashi and EM1 are pretty much the same shit. So really either one, because I use EM1 or Bokashi Earthworks Microbe Plus to make Bokashi. So really, you can just use the liquid form of it and not necessarily have to use Bokashi. Bokashi is just giving it like a surface area to kind of live on and be in an animated state. So that's why a lot of people sprinkle Bokashi on, and most of them are decomposers. So one half does and one way half does another, really.
And to your point about end of the season, absolutely. That's one of the best times of year you can have such an awesome effect on the soil. And I learned that from all the AEA webinar stuff. And man, I applied some of an inoculant called Spectrum Extra from them, and some Sea Shield and some Rejuvenate. It's basically a crab shell, and humate and fulvic and some sugars, along with an inoculant, right? Spray that in the fall on a like 6 or 8 inch deep, like heavy, wet laden leaf mulch bed on top of a garlic bed. In 3 months, it's down to 2 inches. By the time May comes, I have to put more on because there's no mulch left. It's been consumed by the biology in 6 months over the winter. So yeah. And then when you think about that, if you got to put on 6 or 8 inches of mulch every 6 months over the winter, summertime came, I started putting on heavy mats of like grass. I go back and mow like a 24 or 36 inch high grass down, make that as my mulch, lay that on 6, 8, 10 inches deep. It's gone in 2 weeks in the summer, 2 weeks, and I got to replace it again. So you get that system going, that mulch is becoming food very, very quickly.
But indoors, why don't you use something like Hygrozyme or an enzyme that actually is breaking everything down, because that's what its job is to do. So at the end of your season or harvest, using some of that to help break down the root zone, and why not do something like that, Eagle? Have you looked at that stuff?
That's a great idea. I've messed with Pepzyme and I found that to be very beneficial with that. So I imagine that's a similar product, similar thing designed to help, put those enzymes there and facilitate that breakdown and accelerate all those processes.
So to answer your question, no, I haven't had the opportunity to incorporate things like that into the garden yet. When I actually got to try the Bokashi the last time, like I said, was when Smiley passed the earth boxes there, and I had a few runs after that, and that's when I kind of had to tear things down and start anew. Fast forward to today, but when I did use that shit, this just kind of scared me, to be honest with you, because I had the little bit of organics going on in the one part of the garden there, and as we can be very guilty of doing in our gardens. Oh, I got this. Well, if it's gonna be good for this, let's add a little bit of this shit over here, see what it does on this shit. So that's kind of what I did, man. I got some of the Bokashi samples there from Bokashi Earthworks. Cheers to Brandon, appreciate that. And man, I was running the chunky cocoa at the time, which I loved, and was fresh batch. And usually I can recycle that cocoa a couple times. Most times, once I considered like junky cocoa was like the finer shit people would buy today. I like the airier shit, but So what happened that run? That shit fucking annihilated that cocoa. That chunky cocoa was like broke down into the finest. You know what I mean?
Well,
I was like, shit, man. There goes here's a new batch of cocoa, man. That shit's already through the ringer and shit.
That's kind of the bad thing about using biology in cocoa, how quickly it'll break it down.
That was exactly the problem I had with the mulch thing. I couldn't keep up. I'm out there mowing every week trying to get enough mulch. I can't get enough mulch. People are like, oh, I don't know what to do with all my leaves. I'm like, keep them coming. How are you going to get rid of them? They're gone already. You got more?
So eventually, maybe I'll try something that when I get back into the little bit bigger pots. I mean, right now I'm maxing out the 3 gallons. I don't, I'm not souping up them pots too much, knowing that, I'm just gonna. I think about, more recycling or taking that a little bit more, purposeful when I start getting back into the 10 gallons and stuff like that. A minimum of 10 gallons where soil isn't so cheap, harder to get rid of. I am remending, this stuff behind me a little bit as I go, but
Watch that though, because if you're not testing the soil to see how much and what you really need, you might be adding and causing toxicity in some areas.
it's a gamble. It's a gamble.
It is a gamble. And sometimes that's when shit starts to really go bad, when you start to go into flower and there's nothing you can do.
And that's a fine line for me too. And that's where I can take a lot of shit. I'm trying to be open minded and learn the more better organic gardening practices. Anytime I've really dealt with soil in the past, I have 100% been a pump and dump, man. I'm buying it and dumping it every fucking time. These days, listening to you guys and more of the organic stuff, it's getting harder to break away, and you know what I mean. I'm trying to do the right thing. Is it hard to fight that natural urge to, pump and dump? But again, that's a problem now too, because even if I wanted to go back with that mindset, I talked about this a few episodes ago. In the grocery store around here, zip zero none. Big box stores, yes. The soil that I chose to use this round wasn't bad. You know what I mean? Is there probably some inconsistencies in pulling that shit bag after bag after bag off the shelf or different pallets? Yeah, I'm sure I'm going to see different results and different deficiencies from the same company for the same bag. You know what I mean? So something something's got to happen here. You know what I mean? And if you guys seen the lot that I'm in, I'm literally like on a half acre at best in the middle of a fucking well populated area. Just start dumping soil out into the yard now. I'm kind of
It's
reusing for that purpose as
it's
well.
a compost pile at that point.
Yeah. I mean, it is that time of year to fill the flower, the flower pots and shit around the yard.
Yes,
But
yes.
again, God damn it, we're doing an organic show. I'm trying to not,
Well,
not
so
necessarily trying to breach the pump and dump, damn it.
but I've got to do the same thing with my super soil. Like I
Yeah.
could reuse it, but if I'm not testing it to know what I need to add, I'm just gonna throw and hit and miss and my shit. It may cause me to have powdery mildew or have pathogens come in and or toxicity that I'm getting leaf curl or I'm getting now some type of lockout because I've got too much maybe and not enough magnesium coming through. I've played that game for years. I've experienced. I know when I. That's why I dump the soil and start all over. It's just easier for me to do that when I'm running super soil than if I want to test it. Sure, it might save me a bunch of money, but I don't know of a place I can send it to locally.
At the end of the day, what we're trying to do is be as consistent in living soil as we can, right? And the way to do that is to start with the same setup each time, right? The same soil mix, and then adjust that over time as you experience results and recognize that, oh, maybe your calcium's a little low, or maybe you're low on, alfalfa, like maybe a little more of that tryptophan in there. Those sort of things, right? Like, and as you get more dialed into that, you'll dial your soil more. And I was gonna say, like, I'm also, living soil kind of thing, but I'm using the KISS Organics amendment, right? Just because it's already metal tested, it's balanced for cannabis. It's easy. I throw it in the Pro Mix BX, which is a sphagnum perlite, not the best, but it works. I run that. That's consistent, right? And then I'm starting to back mixes with that now, and I'm using that for like to throw herbs and other kind of stuff in. I'm hoping to be able to over time bump that through a couple of cycles of herbs and be able to bring that back into a mix with some of my soils and be able to reuse. But yeah, it's a management system at the end of the day. If you're going to bump soil back, you have to be able to compost it and give it its time to rest and let it have the other pieces of that natural cycle, not just one plant exposure expected to perform unless you can adjust those pieces correctly. And that's again soil testing.
Doesn't yeah, I did a little bit of work. I've done a lot of wide variety of different types of work, but in this case, I was working as a window glazer, putting windows in federal buildings, and one of the buildings happened to be well, it was an Oakland County building down lower state, which also housed all the official court bullshit, da 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 da, veterans bullshit, and it also had Michigan State Agriculture offices in there, which was kind of cool because I asked questions as I was standing on people's desks installing windows. And I could have swore at one point they told me as far as soil testing, every county has an office where you can take soil samples in for relatively cheap and have them tested and kind of. But I guess one of the downsides of that, I guess you have to tell them what you're growing, and well, it's legal here in Michigan, so uh, yeah. Is it really that hard to contact your your local government agency and drop some shit off, or is that too big of a pain in
So
the ass to work with your local government facilities as far as like soil
I don't
testing?
know. I don't know about Michigan, but here in New York, like you can get soil testing done by local like cooperative extensions and stuff. But the
Mhm.
test you're gonna get is only gonna give you like NPK. So
I
missing the other like 90. So you really have no idea what. And those traces again, like manganese and zinc, and those are drivers of major processes, copper, iron, boron.
Heavy metals that everybody's so concerned about that and trace thousandths of a milligram needed, not like tablespoons. But yes, those are all for homeostasis and bring function to plants because they need them for different uptake of regulations or down regulation of shit. And people need to understand this. But how concerned do we become about heavy metals? Because we've discussed that. And one thing I've heard recently that I need to look into a little bit more is using pink Himalayan salt. And because now it's found with a lot of toxins and heavy metals to some of it, especially the shit coming out of China. And so I need to look at some of my sourcing of pink Himalayan salt because hey, it's supposed to be healthy for us. It's one of the better salts. Well, now they say Celtic salt is. Well, which fucking salt is supposed to be the best? Anything but iodized salt? I don't know.
I don't know. Like I say, like keep an eye on your sourcing and notice your results too, right? Like, just be paying attention to things as you go on. If you see something like you see a change happen, like go back and look at your sourcing for your different stuff and see like it's something to be aware of in a bigger picture.
And like Nick talked about, heavy metals go back to iron or aluminum. Aluminum's prevalent through how much of our soil naturally?
almost every scoop of dirt, isn't it? There's traces of aluminum in.
Yeah, but we're overly concerned about heavy metals again.
So that's another funny thing too. So it's rich in silica too, but people tend to add that to the plants. I think unnecessarily, at least outdoors, you know. And is the
Well,
soil that we're using indoors that really deficient of silica that it needs to be?
Silica has a lot of availability issues outdoors unless that soil has been like really triggered up and unless that biology is really rocking in it properly from everything AEA says. Those guys have actually added a silica product.
But look at what I posted on Instagram, horsetail. Horsetail is great to break down and become a silica-based product for your plants to utilize. Not just that, but horsetail has a lot of beneficial compounds to it. It helps fight powder and mildew. You can work it as a magnesium foliar spray. Like horsetail is one of them beneficials that if you find it, pick it, utilize it, make a fermentation, or just in water and let it break down in water and use that type of fermentation instead of a sugar type of fermentation like an FPJ.
And if you're after just a silica out of it, you're trying to make a silica supplement, you can actually boil it for 15 minutes and pull it out. And by the way, make yourself a little tea for that. That's also good for you. It's a nice homeopathic.
Yeah. So there's some of the other types of homeopathic stuff we were talking about earlier, which is both beneficial for us and plants at the same time.
I see things being, so above, so below with us and the plants more and every day. Yeah, to be honest with you on that. So I am sure. So what are some more of the, what both goes both ways? I mean, I heard you mention sugar a second ago. How important is what types of sugars or the type of plants that contain sugars that you add to your process important? I mean, is cane type sugars or white sugars bad versus beet type sugars and stuff like that? I mean,
Naturally, plant-based sugars are preferable. So cane sugar, coconut sugar, stuff like that, versus any sucrose, sucrose.
No
It-
honey either.
Well, honey's good, but it also has where it will kill certain
You
biology
gotta be
because
careful with honey.
it is antimicrobial, antibacterial type of a compound. So it will and can kill some of the biology, but not necessarily all the good ones.
One that's really nice. No, you're right. One that's really nice is molasses, and one that I really like that I did years back, and I actually have to follow up and do that again, get another bag of it. It's a dry molasses. It's basically molasses sprayed onto like a grain hull. That was a nice way for it for the sugar to like slow release as you water or as it rains.
Well, another one we've talked about was yucca. That's a plant-based. It has sugars, it has saponins, but it kills fungi. So is it really beneficial using that stuff when you want to feed your plants the sugars and the saponins to help pull and make it the water wetter in a sense?
Yeah, also, as with anything, and especially with sugars, I would say don't overdo it. You don't want to cause a massive population overgrowth and then collapse.
Well, that's one of the other reasons why I kind of bring up the types of sugars because I've noticed, like, especially when it comes to microbes in the gut, there types of sugars I'm eating definitely pull out different blooms of fucking gut bacteria, and I noticed that. So that's why I wonder if I'm eating certain types of sugars, am I trying to promote bad blooms of shit in my soil? Yeah.
Well, and that's we in our bodies we need the most natural sugars, honey, any plant-based like fruit sugars is what we're looking for. Beets, some of the other starches from potatoes, which it's not necessarily good, but those are the type of sugars that your body needs for type of carbohydrate.
Huge important distinction for humans that sugar should be paired with a fiber or starch, or paired with a fiber always, so that the absorption is slow, not fast. Go ahead.
So
And
when we think sugar, should we be
we
thinking
don't
more
we don't want the
FPJs
process.
instead of like molasses? When it comes to stuff like that, or I've always been big on adding molasses. I still add molasses.
Well, think about what molasses really is. It's brown sugar in a sense.
Yeah, I mean, molasses and brown sugar are pretty similar. I don't think those are a horrible thing to add. I think those are a great, like, if you want to trigger up populations and like accelerate your soil a little bit, sugars. John Kemp was talking about like something like 5 pounds to the acre or something like that is a great booster just to accelerate soil biology. But it's just don't overdo it because you don't want to get a population that grows so large, and then when you don't put sugar in anymore, it collapses and becomes like this whole toxic environment. It's like balance with everything, right? Like a little, not too much. Trace minerals, not teaspoons full, traces.
Trace, thousands of a
Sulfur,
milligrams,
sulfur.
hundreds of a thousandths of a milligram, traces.
I don't know about that. It's more. You watch me mix it, kind of shit. It's all like, but, yeah. There we go.
Hey, Smiley, can you explain saponins for the chat?
Off the cuff, it's an emulsifier. It helps break the water tension, I guess, as well. But saponins are also like there's a molecule to it. It's a protein, so it will break down and eventually become a type of a nitrogen source there as well. It's kind of random. I was thinking sugars a minute ago. But I
Well,
do agree with back to the sugars real quick. I do agree with that. It definitely can cause a boom bust type of scenario with some of that stuff that you're adding. And not to say that I'll never do it. It's just consider it a tool, and the toolbox, and you can use it in certain scenarios for certain things, but it's maybe not something I wouldn't suggest going a real crazy amount of sugars on.
so what would you consider too much then? And how much is too much? Say a 5-gallon bucket. How much sugar content,
Couple
molasses or
tablespoons
whatever?
max when it comes to molasses. 2 tablespoons,
Shoo!
5 gallons is a lot, really.
If you see the amount of sugar I add sometimes, it's probably like half a cup of
So
coconut
why are you
sugar.
using it? I mean, I guess is a good question. Because I use molasses for multi reasons. And hold on, I'm listening, but I want to show you the molasses I'm using, and maybe you can knock or yay or nay what I'm putting in as my sugar source. I'm listening though.
Well,
I would say like a quarter teaspoon for a 5-gallon bucket.
in my buckets, when I'm making some of my teas, I want a big explosion of population. If I'm brewing for a short amount of time, I'm trying to get it in there to break everything down as fast as it can.
Oh, for tea. Well, I thought we
Yeah.
were talking about soil, like in
But
a soil bucket. That's a whole different.
Yeah,
you do
it's-
that stuff. All right.
so that's how I feed the sugars to my plants, is either a sugar water or in a tea where I've added sugar for the biology to consume super quickly, so they'll explode in population. So when I dilute everything down, I'm getting enough biology to feed my plants.
Yeah, that's different. That's for distributed biology. That's different than adding sugar to the soil as basically a carbon source accelerant for biology directly.
Because at that point, it'd be like your exudates excreting sugars for your biology, adding sugar to the soil.
Exactly what you're trying to mimic, enough to trigger that system up faster so that then the plants can carry that process on once they can accelerate their photosynthesis as a result.
Pretty much what we've bought as sweeteners, Vance sold us, the candies back in the day, and that shit was nothing but sugar water. The bud hardeners, that's what I use it for in flour, and there's a sweet spot to when to pull the molasses from being a hardener, a natural hardener, versus you might not be able to smoke that bud for a minute. Too much molasses laid in flour can definitely make a unsmokable bud or something that you will struggle with. But it can actually make a nice, product, in the end. You know, that's my two secrets right there. Between senescence and molasses, those are my hardeners right there. You know what I mean? Or my attempts for hardening the buds up in any type of way. So,
You don't like a black rock in your bowl when you're done smoking?
no, no. But there is a sweet spot when to pull. You know what I mean? For me, that is when we've talked about this the last time. When you see them pistils kind of do this, that's water from then out for me. No more, sweeteners, no more, nothing at that point. But so, no, but nobody uses molasses throughout for flour as a hardener. You're just using it for biological purposes.
I had in the past, and the other thing to consider about like sugars, the type of sugar you use is they're all carbon molecules, right? So they got but the length of and the number of carbons in that molecule matters for that sugar too. So the shorter the chain the sugar is, the more faster it's going to be able to be used up by a lot more things. And what causes that bloom is certain so single celled like bacteria can reproduce a lot faster and grow a lot faster in most cases than other biology, right? Like the larger ones. But anyway, so they can reproduce off this sugar, and if it's really readily available for them, they're going to reproduce and bloom this big, population, which eventually will crash the oxygen content as well inside that media. So there's a lot more than just like going, oh, it blooms this, and then you get a bust, of the soil microbiome. But a lot of that can actually change the soil from being aerobic to anaerobic really fast. And it's not necessarily a case where you've overwatered, right? We're always thinking anaerobic as being that, but it's actually the lack of oxygen. So if this biology in your microbiome is going crazy, it can actually burn up, any of the oxygen, all the resources there before it's going to crash as well. So,
And I've seen exactly that when I've overdone it with stuff. I've watched it like go boom and a plant take off and be like, yeah.
10 days later, all of a sudden it starts
Yeah.
looking nitrogen
10 days,
deficient
2
or
weeks later, all of a
issues.
sudden the crash comes on, boy, and boy, she turns sideways on you hard, and there's nothing you can do now. Too late.
So what besides sugars, like has anybody used agave or type of sweeteners to feed their plants?
I've never tried agave, but back to sugar, I have tried molasses and raw, the raw chunky brown sugar instead. Those are the two, I have tried. I haven't tried any like agave or aloe.
Aloe's a really good one, but it has more just benefits than a sugar source.
yeah, and
Uh,
personal experience, you don't want to use aloe and flour either.
So I know that recently I've heard, and I believe you've mentioned it, Smiley, like cocoa powder, coconut powder. So is that, again, are we adding sugars through that process? Is that, again?
Yeah, it absolutely is. So, I mean, that's what I was going to say. Coconut water powder is the one that I actually do still use after running through a lot of the different ones. But the coconut water has a lot more than just sugar too. It's got
some fat, lipids,
yeah, and
electrolytes,
it's
and
got the
The water, oh yeah.
cytokine hormone in it as well. So it's like it's gonna promote fruiting and branching in that aspect.
Hey, let's think about that for a sec. The coconut water is the liquid out of the seed of the coconut tree. It's going to be prepped for growing on a massive level. That's a no joke seed.
So do they make germination teas out of coconut water?
no, most of it's through seed, like SST not necessarily coconut.
I just realized we're past.
But we started a little late, so you know that's not a bad thing.
True that.
But how do you guys feel about milk? Because I've talked about using milk many times to feed my plants for the sugars, the lactose, the bacillus, the lactose sugars, the fat content. How do you guys feel?
I use milk to help manage blight in years past before I had better understanding nutrition on tomatoes. It was semi-effective. It definitely had more effect than any other crap I tried.
Well, yeah.
and
Also
come to find out-
PM. Yeah.
yeah. And come to find out, listening to John Kempf, that it's more the fat in the milk than anything, right? So like they always recommended 2% milk fat, but I'd say go for the higher milk fat.
Go for so you want whole milk, but there's a difference in the type of whole milk because a lot of milk is high pasteurized, ultra pasteurized. There's stuff from Kelowna, which is a company out of Iowa, Kelowna, Iowa, that has an ultra low pasteurized cream top milk. So it still has a lot of fat, the actual cream to it, and it still has a lot of the good biology because it's low pasteurized and not ultra pasteurized or high temperature pasteurized where it's killing almost everything off. So that to me is like one of the better milks that I try to use when I'm working with it.
And that makes me think that even better than that probably would be raw milk, although that would probably cost you a fortune to use.
Even kefir.
Or maybe even a yogurt water extract. I mean, all kinds of ideas come to mind off of that.
Well, you
But
have to
then-
watch.
but then you're back to, yeah.
Some of the yogurts having soy to it, estrogen.
Oh, yeah.
So more of a Greek yogurt possibly than an actual yogurt where you have
Well,
more cultures and it's a thicker protein content.
Yeah, when I say any food, assume I mean organic sourced.
Explain to me why. It brings a good giggle to me every time I'm in the grocery store. There is 0% milk. 0% milk. Yeah, you never seen it? If not, I'll be happy to send you a picture.
Not 1%, 0%. Well, then that
Zero.
would be,
It literally says 0%.
you can't call it milk at that point.
It says 0% on it. I swear to you. I will literally go out of my way to go and take you a picture.
No,
Well,
no,
it's not out of my way
no,
to go there all the
No,
time.
that's
But I
where
will
we're
take
going.
you a picture of that jug.
That's where we're going with packaging. That kind of trickery. 0% milk. Well, what is it? It's actually water.
Sugar water at that.
Yeah. And we had a little roundup for you.
Well, it also
I
has some
think the
aspartame.
0% fat content is what that is.
But dude, you've taken all the good stuff out of it, though, haven't you? At that point,
It's not really
A
milk
lot
at
of
that
it.
point. Yeah.
Milk is comprised of fats and proteins, isn't it? Isn't that the primary thing? That
Well,
and water as
that's
a
the big
carrier.
difference. And what they're talking about, though, is like the 1% is the 1% fat content, is what I remember about it.
Hey, Eagle.
Be like zero.
Exactly.
I don't know.
And you can get 1%, 2%, 4% is whole milk. 8% is like a light cream. You can go on up to like 32% heavy cream. That's what you use for whipping.
Eagle, Chad Westport says your 0% fat or your 0% comes from a skinny cow.
That's a good one. That is a good one. Yeah, I will take a picture of that. I giggle every time. I literally stop and giggle every time I see that jug.
Hydrolyzed.
I get what you're saying. I understand it is the fat content, but when you look at the jug and you go 0% milk, it's what I'm buying.
Sound right.
Yeah.
So what's the price on that? Is it expensive?
It's the same price as regular milk.
Well, is that for the people that are lactose intolerant? But lactose is still going to be in that 0% because it's sugar from the milk.
Yeah, I don't know. But as far as to answer your question, I've never tried it with the plants. I've heard good things about adding it both directly to the soil, cleaning the plants, as you mentioned, house plants in particularly. I've never really heard too many people wiping their cannabis leaves down to clean them, but
I'm actually spraying milk on them to help fight powdery mildew as well.
there you go.
Because the lactose bacillus that is in it is one of the things that will help fight off. And it's the good biology keeping the bad biology in check.
Always keep good biology on the phytoplane, the leaf surface, and the rhizosphere, the root surface, and then the bad biology can't infect it because the good biology has already occupied that territory.
And then our plants like fats and lipids anyhow. So this is a good source that we're actually feeding them, because really we don't talk about most of these nutrients that we're feeding them don't have fats or lipids to them. So when we're doing some of our like composting, where we're getting, if you're throwing dairy in your compost, yogurts, now you're getting some other fats and lipids to your soil.
We do talk about fungi, and they like to make 38 to 42% lipophilic acid, which is a fat.
Didn't think of it that way. Yeah.
Yeah, it is funny. Definitely used to consume it for the proteins and fats. The way I understand it, that is our history with milk. Is we started consuming it in European countries early on through famines because of the fats and proteins that were in it. Once they snapped out of the famines in the European countries, they kind of weaned away from the use of milks and cheeses and dairy products, to where later on we kind of still kept using milk here in the Americas for, whatever reasons. We never really abandoned it. But
They
That
just
was this.
because they pumped it down our throats. That was a whole marketing propaganda shit.
That's
it's
why
very
we
true
drank
that,
gallons and gallons of it as kids growing up.
You know, all the
yeah,
schools gave it away, shit like
if
that.
you look at that, you're 1000% right. The government does subside heavily in the dairy industry, and that number of what we should consume has went up over the years. As dairy consumption has went up and down, there has been propaganda telling you need to up your intake of milk. Got milk? That's where them campaigns came from, as the push on the low dairy sales. So
Yeah.
yeah, it is. Yeah, we don't consume it for the proper reasons here anymore. Right?
Well, we should be using a wholer milk, a cleaner milk, and higher fat. Like I laugh when I walk down the grocery aisle myself. Like I'm looking at the high fat organic yogurt. That's what I'm taking. I'm watching people like picking out the low fat stuff. I'm like, you're robbing yourself of exactly what you're trying to actually buy. Like it's kind of sad. And they're sometimes paying a premium for low fat. It's like, man, the fats are what drive the diet. They're healthy fats from healthy animals and plants. Man, that's exactly what you need. Healthy fats and proteins.
Butter is a healthy fat, which we were always taught it's no good for you. It causes you to have a heart attack, which all this other shit they made for us to consume was the shit that was causing the problems, when butter was actually, in fact, what was good for us. So eating butter, as you see people just eat it off the stick, is actually healthier for you than
That's the whole
margarine.
different story. What people think is butter and what, what I mean, isn't butter. A lot of us think that just a stick is, it is margarine. It's all fucking 100% whipped vegetable oil. It's terrible for us, a lot of them. But natural
won't-
butter is delicious. But
Yeah, I won't eat any of that
consume
artificial crap.
butter. It's expensive. The shit's expensive for a natural log of 1 pound. I think it's 1 pound. It's like $10. $10 for a log of butter.
But here's what's crazy. Our food industry and our government allows so many more different chemicals that are harmful and toxin to us here in the States versus anywhere else in the country, or the world, I mean. because other governments in different parts of the world doesn't allow these chemicals to be in their food because they know the harmful problems with them.
Yeah. The take home out of that is just think about this. What do you consider an acceptable level of toxin in your food? Because that's what they consider, and they'll pass it and call that your food.
Well, and then they'll move the goalpost and change the level raising and say, oh, no, no, now we've raised it, it's still okay. Just like all the contamination, radiation contamination from the seafood that everybody's been eating. Oh, they raised the levels to this is now acceptable when it was never that high to begin with.
And let's just back up a second, consider all the other pieces that drive that, right? Like,
We could go on all night long. We got to cut this at some point. I've got a pork butt roast in there that has been twice now. It's in the pressure cooker twice now. Once cooked, opened up, seasoned, partly barbecued, closed up,
Sounds so
resealed,
tender.
pressed back in. We're on the third,
So
between the
tender.
second and like the third press, you know, where I've opened it up, fucking dumped a little bit more sauce and dumped a little of the water out, a little bit more sauce, push it back in there. Last I looked, it was already well falling apart. So I have found I think it's like 8 pounds of pork fucking butt in there that's all pulled, barbecued, and ready to be thrown down on in there. I'm ready, boys. I'm ready. That's what I'm saying.
pull the plug, Eagle, man. It sounds like you got awesome food waiting for you.
But I do appreciate you guys for hanging out and doing this. I do feel like, man, it does bum me out that, you know, shit happens, life happens. But,
Maybe confirm day before, confirm the day
I
of.
do.
10 times something.
I do.
It's
Life-
strange though to me that if you're confirming so many times that last minute they still can't say, hey, I just can't make it.
Well, I mean, today was a little different. I mean, we talked about it before the show. I mean, I didn't realize it was a holiday weekend. And I can be very guilty these days of letting time get by. You know what I mean? Time flies by so fucking fast these days. I mean, it really does, man. You fucking get doing something, start playing with the kids or whatever, and fucking boom, gone. Hours.
And
Podcast. Even listen to a podcast, whatever. You turn around, fucking, where did they go? Fucking, oh, it's dark out there.
And hey, let's not forget these guys. The reason we want these guys on for guests is because they're so busy doing something so awesome. So they are busy, like they are like busy with their lives. That's why they're awesome people to talk to.
So, can I share something with you guys as far as like our lives and time going by so fast and stuff? I had one of the best moments I've had in my life the other day, and I'd like to share it with you. It was with the grandson. So I don't get to see him that often, and it's always a blessing, and I appreciate it all the time. Just turned 2 the other day. Still can't have that conversation, you know what I mean, that you long for as you watch the babies and grandbabies grow up. But it was a beautiful experience to he kind of pulled me aside, and I had bought him a nice little bounce house. It's a little guy, like an 8x8, you know, personal for a little man there. And I didn't see it set up. And he pulled me from like, he literally, I like, follow me, Grandpa. And go around in the back of the house. It's set up. And I get to go watch him bounce around. And my first time actually getting to see him since Christmas, to be, you know, right about honest. So it was cool to see it was set up and he had enjoyed it. And so I got to watch him jump around in it for a minute. And so I tell him, you should, stand up. He's bouncing around on his knees. And so he bounces around and he made this attempt to, like, I thought he was trying to hand me something, but there wasn't nothing there. So I kind of, like, I was trying to, like, catch, you know what I mean? So he bounces around a little bit longer. And as he gets out, he looks me dead in the eyes. You know what I mean? And gives me a fist bump is what he wanted. So it gives me this little, like, fist bump on his way out and just takes off, charging across the yard. But I think that was, again, kind of his recognition of, but it was, I've been waiting for that moment, and it was an awesome moment. But time does go by that fast, though, is what I'm saying. You know what I mean? So appreciate all the time you get in them beautiful moments. And I appreciate the time you guys spend with me. You know what I mean? Goes by super fast. And you know what I mean? When things don't go the way they intended, I feel like I kind of dropped the ball a little bit. But I do appreciate you guys' time and continue to hang out. So cheers to you guys.
Yeah, it's a good time, man.
Cheers.
Well, with that being said, we will talk with Brown Guy 420 in 2 weeks on the next scheduled episode. But until then, you guys want to tell them where you can find you guys and.
Well, real quick, are you sure you don't have nobody else scheduled that day and you checked your calendar?
I will double check that. You're right. I can double check that.
I just wanted to make sure, throw that out there because I know we have people scheduled. I don't know if the schedules are or when, but you've talked about it, so I just want to make sure.
Good
you're
looking out there. Good
not-
looking out there, brother. I should double check that.
Anyhow, you could find me medically fit here on YouTube or Instagram.
Yes, confirm no override on that. And you can find me at the Pharmacy Seas Network on YouTube.
Smileys_garden. I do a weekly garden tour. You guys check that out. I got seeds that we do through smileysangels.org. And yeah, appreciate all the support.
You can find me right here and on heel days on the Run Eagle Run, trying to get back to that slowly but surely. But I do appreciate you guys 100% and the people that continue to watch and follow along this. I appreciate everybody for this. You guys have an amazing holiday weekend, and I look forward to seeing you guys very soon.